I'm talking about pleasure. Um, Thanks, Barbara. Glad to hear the light looks okay. We'll get it. It's a learning curve. Like I said last time, I'm going to start a YouTube channel of me just trying to learn how to use technology. It'll be entertaining. That, and I want to start one where I get drunk and do Bob Ross paintings. So stay tuned for that. So, pleasure. Last week I didn't do a live because I was also away without internet. Um, I had internet, but I didn't want to. I wanted to be present because that is part of experiencing pleasure. The week before, I was on a little bit of a rant about wet ass pussy and society's restrictions of female pleasure. And so the week before, I was talking about pleasure as well, um, and experiencing more pleasure in your life. So often we come to this place because we want to experience more pleasure in our sex lives, or we want to experience more sexual pleasure. Who doesn't want to experience more? No, I mean I do. I do want to experience more. Um, Maybe some people don't. There are people that don't, and then that's great. But many of us do. But I have learned on my journey, my pleasure journey, that I am still very much on, that expanding the way to pleasure, to more sexual pleasure in your life is to advance pleasure in general. So experiencing more pleasure in your life all around. And I think for me, I didn't really realize how much I was blocking myself out of pleasure or not allowing pleasure into my life. Um, One reason being, like, I struggle with some chronic pain. And so part of dealing with that is not being like learning to have not been in my body and not feel pain, or try in an attempt to feel less pain. So with that, you block pleasure out. I was actually just reading about how closely connected, in terms of neurons and pathways that I couldn't explain, how closely connected pain and pleasure are. So you really do lock one out. When you block one out, you block the other. You experience less of the other. So experiencing more pleasure will allow you to just have a happier life and more joyful life, because joy and pleasure are very closely connected, and experience more pleasure in the bedroom. So, couple tips, I guess, or things that you can do to increase pleasure in your life and therefore increase pleasure in your sex life. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, which I'm sure I will get to. I have some things planned for the fall, which I'm very excited about, which I'll tell you about come fall. We still have a month left of summer, FYI. Slightly less, a few weeks left of technical summer. And I apologize, I have allergies at the end of summer. So, things to experience more pleasure in your life. So, last 2 lives ago, I was talking about writing a pleasure list, everything that you find pleasurable, all the small things, scheduling your pleasure, and making time in your day to experience more pleasure, and getting clear on why you might not be experiencing pleasure or where you're denying yourself pleasure. Um, Sometimes shame is closely related. So, oh, and I believe I talked about being present and mindfulness and experiencing things in the present and in your body. Um, so one way to experience more pleasure is rest. I think that's something I'm really learning. I have a tendency to continue to do the productivity things, to do the productive things until I'm exhausted, and that I will only let myself rest when I'm like done everything. That's the old me. Now I'm learning. I'm learning to just take rest when I need it, and that things become more pleasurable. Rest itself is pleasurable. Like there's so much pleasure in doing nothing um, and doing it, not in a way of like avoiding, but in a way of like really listening to what you need. And hi, Laura. Hi, Christy. Um, some people's names I don't know. Sorry. Hi, Ruby. So, Jess, just resting when you need it, and listening to your body. Um, taking a nap when you need it. Um, just staring out the window and just doing nothing for the sake of doing nothing because you need it and you don't need to um, have worked yourself to that point or have reached a certain amount of productivity to get there. Um, you deserve rest, and rest in itself is pleasurable and um, will allow you to experience more pleasure. Because when we're rested, we're not stressed and experiencing all those hormones that get in the way. Um, we're experiencing more things like endorphins and dopamine and all those good things that make us feel really good. So, incorporating rest and allowing yourself to rest, like I said, I'm still learning, can really both be pleasurable but also allow you to experience more pleasure. Another pleasure habit, as I call them, is dancing. Surprise. Um, I find dancing very pleasurable personally, sometimes, most of the time. There's that, again, experiencing the pleasure of dance, but also just the experience of being in your body. Um, I, I have done, I've done things with my students before where we, close our eyes and we dance around and we feel the music and we move our bodies in ways that we want to. And we did some ecstatic dance at the women's retreat that I ran with Whole Health Chelsea in January in Costa Rica before the world exploded. And that was like really powerful and meditative. And I recently also did it in Kat Nance's Rewilding the Pleasure or the Feminine workshop. And it was just nice to revisit how good that feels to be in your body and not in a way that is productive. If that makes sense. Like for many of us who do dance, it's like very choreography train based and being in your body and moving in a way and listening to what your body wants and what your body wants to do and just listening to music, I think is a really valuable experience in um, getting in tune with what your body needs and therefore accessing more pleasure. And it just feels good. It just feels good to move your body in a way that isn't like judgmental. The whole point is not about that it's supposed to look a certain way or, even feel a certain way. It's just however you want to move and however your body feels like it wants to move. So that is another pleasure habit. And the final pleasure habit that I will talk about today is um, is feeling your feelings. So people don't like this, but I talk about it all the time. It's not easy, but again, if we block out feelings in our lives, we're always avoiding certain feelings. Like if you block out the negative, you block out the positive. Um, and we limit ourselves to really positive experiences because we're so busy trying to not feel the bad shit. And I talk a lot about how, the whole basis of the coaching that I do is that we are, everything that you're doing or not doing is to feel or not feel an emotion. So when we want to make changes in our lives, we need to start with the thought that's causing the emotion, not the action, not the change that we want to see. So an example would be like if I wanted to start exercising and I buy new shoes and I get a membership to the gym and I set a schedule. Um, the but I just can't do it. Like I have all the things, but I can't do it. But if I don't address the thoughts that are related to the exercise, like I hate exercise, or I think it's useless, or it's not going to do anything anyway, or I have some deep, you know, relationship to it because I was teased in gym class, whatever it is, if I don't address that thought and the feelings that come up around that, like shame and guilt and um, maybe sadness, whatever it might be, then I'm always going to like have this reaction to exercise and I'm not going to make the change, even though I did all the things. All of this is to say that in order to change that, you need to be willing to feel your feelings. So we need to be willing to sit with that shame or that sadness or that grief, um, and allow it, really experience it in our bodies and what that feels like. What does shame look like and feel like in my body? Does my chest get tight? Does my face get flush? Um, and knowing that those feelings aren't going to hurt you. They might be uncomfortable, but they're just sensations in your body that you are able to use. You're able to feel. You're able to use them for um, bettering, like moving through them. You're able to feel them. And I find that when you spend some time and give some space to those feelings, they lessen a bit. So all this is to say that when you are willing to start feeling those feelings, you're going to open yourself up to more positive feelings, including all the feelings of pleasure. Um, and for some of us, if we go back to a couple of lives ago, when you're thinking about what might be getting in the way of pleasure, some of us have really complicated relationships with pleasure, like I'm not deserving of it, or like what if I enjoy myself and then shit hits the fan and I lose everything I love. Um, it gets hard to feel um, true pleasure in that sense because we're always worried about loss or pain or whatever it might be. So I think Brene Brown has some good stuff on like that vulnerability and being able to feel joy, like real joy. And the only way to do that is to be truly vulnerable. But getting aware of what those thoughts are that's causing that, and then what the feelings those thoughts are causing, and then being willing to sit with those feelings, because once we are willing to sit with the negative, we open ourselves up to way more positive emotions and to experiencing more pleasure, which is what we want to do. So I'm going to cut it there. I've got a few more which I will share with you next week, but if you just can't wait and you like to read things, I've written a blog about it. So it's 10 ways to fill your life with pleasure, I believe. So it's 10 pleasure habits that I recommend for incorporating into your life to experience more pleasure. And you can find that and all my stuff at olivevontopp.com/blog.